if I'm not mistaken. And so you'll be hearing from everyone today. But yes, thank you everyone for being here. But you all have the special treat of being our guinea pigs as we are embarking on this, what we've dubbed as the Michigan Vision Project. And so it is an endeavor that we are taking to take a statewide listening tour to understand what is top of mind for the residents of Warren and the people of Michigan, to understand how we can put together an agenda that meets the needs of people, because everyone knows that we are in very divisive and trying political times. Those things that exist that you hear about on the news in DC also transcend to our world in Lansing. And so tonight's conversation is going to be focused on education. So we have a pretty robust $85+ billion state budget in Michigan. One of the biggest subcomponents of that budget is our public education spend, which is roughly about $20 or $21 billion every year. So it's a huge component of our state budget. And like everything else, education has been deeply politicized as well. And so that we are unfortunately past the July 1st deadline in the budget process of getting a state budget done. And so what that ends up leading to is local individual school districts can't plan for the upcoming school year. And so school districts across the state have already started pink slipping teachers, teachers that might be lucky enough to have a job, are unable to prepare for the school year and buy supplies for their classroom. And as a father to 3 young kids, it's very hard for parents to then plan what after school activities will look like in the upcoming school year. So there's a lot of kind of dominoes that unfortunately fall when things are not prepared like the way that they've been done. And getting the budget done on time is not some sort of novel idea that we've never been done before. In fact, in the last legislative term, there was a Democratic trifecta where the state House, the state Senate, and the governor's office were all controlled by Democrats. The budget was done on time every year, didn't miss a beat, no issues, no drama. But this year, those things have changed, and so we are in split government. And I know for some people that sounds like a really great thing to say, because that can lead to amazing bipartisan ideas in which there's buy-in, or there's the other route, it just leads to gridlock and nothing getting done. And unfortunately, this legislature right now that we are working through is the least productive legislature in modern history. I think the last 50 years. So only 6 bills have been passed into law compared to roughly around 80, which should be normal. And a lot of that is being done because things like education are being highly politicized by our Republican Speaker, Matt Hall, and Michigan House Republicans. And so they've passed their version of a budget early in, I believe, March or April, in which they gutted education and they cut $5 billion out. They took out just very core pieces of the budget, things that we'll get into later. And so today's meant to do is spur some conversation. It's more of actually a listening session for us to understand what is top of mind. How do we craft a budget that meets the needs of individual communities? What things are important, and then just anything else that we want to flag. So I know that there's going to be absolutely time for dialogue and questions. I think some have already been submitted, so we thank you for that. On every table is a card and maybe hopefully a pen. But please, if you have a question, feel free to write it down on that piece of paper and submit that to some of our team members that are walking around here. But again, we have kind of a rock star lineup here alongside with me, led by your local representative, Mai Zong, and I do want to hand it off to her to continue to kind of build out what we're going to be doing tonight.
Thank you so much, Leader Puri. And I also want to thank Rep. Young and Rep. Price. Thank you both for being here. Welcome, everyone. I'm State Representative Mai Zong, and I want to welcome all of you to the 13th House District, which does include Warren, the majority of Roseville, and a portion of St. Clair Shores. Thank you for joining us on a Friday evening. I know that many of you are working hard throughout the summer and appreciate you sacrificing your time to be with us. And I realize that a lot of families have responsibilities, and so we are streaming this live on social media. It will be recorded, so feel free to share with your contacts for those that were not able to make it tonight. We want to be as accessible and as transparent as possible. I'm a former refugee. Many of you who are my constituents have heard my story, but for those that don't know, I came here when I was 3 years old and was the first in my family to start preschool and have a full public school education experience. I attended Macomb Community College right here on campus and graduated from the College for Creative Studies. And so I know firsthand how important public education is to ensuring that we have a successful future workforce and how transformative it can be. I'm living proof of it. As a mom with 4 young children in Warren Consolidated Schools, I worry every day about the budget, the lack of funding for our schools, our teachers, and I know how hard our teachers and educators and staff and administrators work to take care of our kids. So always advocating for our educational system at the state level. I'm proud that as House Democrats, we have invested in education the past 2 years that we were in majority. And prior to that, Republicans were in the majority for over 40 years, longer than I was alive. So we had 2 years to try and undo a lot of the work that they have done in defunding our schools. Unfortunately, there's still so much work for us to do. Some of the things that we did do in the majority was implementing the universal free breakfast and lunch program, which is one that I hear from parents and seniors and others time and time again about how important it is. And I'm just going to put it out there. You can say that you're pro-life, but if you don't believe in feeding children, then that doesn't mean anything. So one thing I heard yesterday from Senator Sarah Anthony, who is the appropriations chair on the Senate side, was that budgets are moral documents. And however we fund our budgets, you can say that you care about kids, but you got to put your money where your mouth is. And so as Democrats, we have done that. No child should learn with a hungry stomach. Many of these children rely on the free breakfast and lunch because that may be the only meal that they will be getting. We continue to build up schools, investing in safety so that educators can focus on teaching and that kids can focus on learning without worrying about what's happening outside the classroom doors. And it doesn't just stop with physical health. I mean, we've invested in empowering school districts across the state to implement mental health support because we know how important that is, and the pandemic really just exacerbated that. We've also worked to equip students with academic support, whether it's one-on-one tutoring or providing extra time with counselors. That is the Michigan education system that House Democrats and Michigan Democrats truly believe in and have invested in. And, you know, Republicans have been set on rolling back these investments. They have, as Leader Puri has said, they've defunded our schools. And when you hear them talking about, well, you know, we've increased in our version of the budget, the per pupil foundation allowance to $12,000 per pupil, you really have to look at the details and realize that they are taking from Paul and robbing from Peter and giving to Paul. So, you know, I look forward to continuing building a stronger future for our kids. We're working really hard to push back on a lot of these harmful policies, not just from our House colleagues, but also from the federal government. Our Attorney General just earlier this month or last week joined 20 other states to sue the federal government because there were grants that should have been sent to the schools on July 1st, and the federal government just decided that, nope, we're not sending you these dollars. So the Department of Education is getting dismantled. The free breakfast and lunch program is at risk of being defunded. Higher education as well too. I mean, these are people who graduated from U of M and MSU and they got their degrees and they're like, see ya, in defunding the schools because they got their part and now they don't want to ensure that our kids and our young adults have a quality higher education. So the work that they're doing is just really harmful, and we really need your help to get that word out, to let people know that this is what is happening with Republicans in the majority. It is not helping any one of us. 6 bills that have been signed into law. I will make a note that there are actually 9 bills that the Republican Speaker has been withholding unconstitutionally. He is openly violating the Constitution. These are bills that we passed in the House and the Senate, and under the Constitution, they shall have been, or they should have been, presented to the governor, and we are still fighting to get these bills to the governor's desk. And one of those bills, and I'll never stop talking about it until it gets to the governor's desk, is 6058, which would lower health insurance for our teachers.
Yep.
So why they are holding these bills back, we know why, because they want to hurt others and to continue to help support their billionaire donors like Betsy DeVos. And so there is so much more that we need to do, and we need your help to get that word out and to help us push back on these harmful policies. And with that, I will hand it over to Representative Young. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you all can hear me. I'm not a teacher, but I have a teacher voice. I think that goes with being a preacher too. Preachers got big mouths too. So I happen to be one of those too. But I just want to thank all of you for being here today. I see our educators. I see the folks on the front line. On the front line. We in the legislature just need you to know that we really do have your backs. I got a bunch of talking points here, but they already said all the good stuff. I just want to, because you guys need to know that this is a Friday night. This is when people are preparing to go do something fun. So it's clear to me how serious education is to you, or you would not be here. And so we are here to listen to what you all have to say. I just had one of these meetings on Monday where we brought everybody together. We have 5 policy areas. We actually tried to tackle all 5. And I'll tell you this, the one that had the most dialogue was the education conversation. It was the education. We had educators talking about how they need more support in the classroom. How they're like, so now we have to administer the medication. Now we have to be the social worker. Now we have to be all of these things that we didn't necessarily sign up to be. We want to hear from you all on what are the ways that we can help mitigate those types of additional challenges. One of the biggest things that came about during that conversation was cell phones in the classroom. They're like, now we're the cell phone police. And not only that, but we have the parents mad at us when we say, please ask your child to not bring your phone into the classroom. And these are things that are critical to learning. How many studies have shown that phones and these things can serve as a distraction? But because we're living in a society where we pray for our kids to be safe when they go to school, now we're concerned. I never went to school where I had to have active shooter drills. I don't think many of us in this room, I don't think any of us had active shooter drills when we went to kindergarten, when we went to middle school, when we went to high school, when we did those things. And so these are all the things that fall under the education umbrella. We know that education is the pathway for young people to not be in poverty. And yet, for some reason, there are folks that want to minimize access to education. I wonder why that is. I wonder why that is. We're becoming the society of have and have nots, and it's getting wider and wider and wider. So we're here to narrow the gap. And we know we can do it with partners like you. So with that, because I want to get to you all, I'm going to pass it over to my good colleague, Representative Price.
Thanks, Rep. Young, always inspiring me. Hello, all. I'm Rep. Natalie Price. I represent Berkeley, where I live, Huntington Woods, most of where I live, most of Birmingham, and then little bits of Southfield, Beverly Hills, and Bloomfield Township. I was a teacher before becoming a state rep. I taught high school English, and stepping up to fight for equitable funding for education is why I'm here doing what I do. Last term, I served on that school aid subcommittee. So proud of the work that Rep. Xiong mentioned that we advocated for, the free breakfasts and lunches, mental health supports, more equitable funding of education. Now we're in minority, as Leader Puri said. We're in a difficult situation where somebody else is setting the agenda in the House. And when we ended up in minority, it was important to me that we make good use of this time. So I did a lot of reading, talked to some colleagues in other states, wanted to learn from other people who were in Democratic majority and then ended up in minority, and what did they do to make good use of that time to be able to come back into power to help be good advocates for education and other issues. And learned that there are other people wanting to do similar work and have had success creating collaborative agendas. And this is where this project, the Vision Project, comes in. So you can see on the board, this is our collective Michigan House Dems vision statement. Through a series of surveys and tough conversations, we in the Michigan State House articulated a vision statement, including 5 areas, which Rep. Young alluded to. So we, as you can see, we have affordability, education, healthcare, the environment, and then labor and economic opportunity. We have identified that as Michigan House Dems, these are the areas that we want to set our focus. But we're not done. We are eventually hoping to walk away with a clearly articulated policy agenda, priorities of what we will do when we get the gavels back and come into power. But we need your help to get there. So the ask at the end of this will be for you to fill out a survey. This is where we need to hear from you. You can also help give us the feedback in the conversation and in the questions you ask. Let us know what is important to you. Tonight, we're focusing on education. So grateful. It's what my constituents want to talk about. It's what I want to talk about as a former teacher, as a parent to middle school kids. They're all important, but this one hits real close to heart for me. And we need your stories. In the survey, there's an opportunity for you to share how these issues impact you. If you're willing to share, as a teacher, this is how I see my students being impacted. As a homeowner, this is what I'm worried about when my adult kids are trying to afford their first home. Whatever perspective that you bring to how you are personally impacted by our priorities, please share, because those stories are going to help us shape our policy level agenda to determine what we need to do as soon as we get back into power. So with that, I am finally going to turn it over to Rep. Xiong to lead us in discussion.
Thank you so much, Rep. Price. All right, so we want to hear from you. I know we have some cards, but if anyone wants to just raise their hand, if they have a question, we can call on you. And I can also ask you a question, but really I want to hear from all of you. So I will start. So, Bob, go ahead.
I just want to say thanks for being here and listening to your constituents regarding public education. I am a career educator. My kids are in our public schools right here, right down the street at Walmart High School. And I currently serve as the president of Teachers Union in Warren Consolidated Schools. And some people might look at that and go, oh, he's just the union guy. But I can tell you through and through, I am an educator first and foremost. And throughout my career, all I have heard about is school reform, school reform, school reform. And there's been a moving target, right? It just keeps going. What is the flavor of the day? What is the new mantra for education? What is the next thing that educators are going to be faced with? And more than ever, we need stability. We don't need cuts. We need action. We need support. We need the support not only from our legislators, but from our communities speaking up for our schools, because we need people to be in our buildings. We need people supporting our kids, not only at school, but at home. As some of you alluded to, too often things like cell phones and other societal things are making their way into the classroom, where teachers are the fixers and are sort of being tasked with the woes of society, as opposed to, we need the public support to this. Teachers and educators cannot do this alone, right? So more than ever, obviously, at the end of the day, it comes down to funding. And we know the budget is there and the budget is necessary. But between the cuts being made to Medicaid that are going to impact my speech language pathologists, my social workers, my critical supports for the teachers and educators that support our most needy students.
That's right.
We're looking at funding cuts that are going to impact them. And the problem with that is when that funding impacts those group of key support staff, it's going to impact all of our staff because we're going to be looking for ways to try to circumvent that, right? So at the end of the day, cuts are going to cause an impact. No matter where they occur or what budget line they come out of, they are going to impact our schools. So I appreciate listening. I don't want to take up all the mic time, but I did want to at least get my thoughts in the air. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Did any of you guys want to respond to that?
Well, I think you're spot on. You know, the reality is that not everything comes down to dollars and cents, but the stability in the schools is paramount. You know, and I don't love to make everything partisan, but it's obviously the nature of our business. But if we even are objectively looking at the history of school funding in Michigan, the quality of the results coming out of Michigan schools has declined over the last few decades. But there is a strong correlation to the fact that during that same period there's been tremendous funding cuts that have happened. Some of the lowest per pupil spending in the country. Our state in the worst of times was, you know, on the list with Alabama and Louisiana. And, you know, no offense to them, but you don't want to be on a list with Louisiana and Alabama. And but as the Democratic trifecta came about, and with starting in 2018 with the election of Governor Whitmer, you started to see an uptick in school funding, up to the point now where we're having record funding year in, year out. We're approaching over $20 billion annually on school funding. And anyone here, you don't have to have a PhD in, you know, in education administration to understand that it takes time to reverse those results. And so we don't need to be making any of these cuts. These are a political choice that's happening. And so, again, in the Michigan House, there was a bill earlier this year to enroll a personal income tax cut from 4.25 to 4.05, which would save the average Michigan family $70 a year. But collectively, that's $800 million that would be coming out of Michigan schools. And so, again, these are political choices that we're making. And to your point, anytime money is taken out of the budget, whether it's directly or tangential to the schools, it will have an impact on our educators and our kids. And so I guess the point that we want to make here is that these are choices that are being made. There is no necessity to make cuts in our education budget. These are political choices that the other side of the aisle is forcing upon us.
I think I can talk without a microphone. I prefer. Thank you. My name is Freya, and I'm an advocate and work with these wonderful educators from Warren, Romeo, Mount Clemens. We know there's a tremendous teacher shortage right now. First, I'm sorry, I want to thank you for everything you did collectively for workers' rights in Michigan, the last round of bargaining, including the restoration of the prohibited subjects of bargaining. Very significant to us. With regard to healthcare costs, you know, we know that public education has historically been low-paying jobs, that the private sector pays much more. And one of the benefits people looked at was deferred compensation through a defined benefit plan, which has now gone away for new teachers. Another is healthcare. And we know that public education is a female-dominated classification, and not everyone is married and has a husband or other partner to support them. So what I'm concerned about is these rising healthcare costs. And I know we're trying to get a school aid budget, and we know that 6058 is pending litigation. And I don't think you can answer this question, but I just want to urge you to try and find money in order to make healthcare costs affordable. When we bargain now, we're trying to bargain increases because the cost of gas, the cost of clothes, the cost of school supplies, everything has gone up. And so what we bargain with what we can to raise wages is not going to cover the increase in healthcare costs. And we're not looking at people that do not have healthcare because they can't afford it anymore. So I don't think you can answer us and tell us, is 6058 magically going to be, presented on the governor's desk and she's going to sign it. But I just hope that you'll consider some way, in addition to the state aid budget, providing some sort of additional compensation to help with rising insurance costs.
Thank you, Reyes. And you're right that 6058 is not going to solve all of the problems across the board. It is certainly a start, and it was, I think, a very transformative start to really stop those increases that are now occurring this year. And we knew that in 2024, and that's why we worked quickly to pass that in both chambers. It was just unfortunate that it was something that couldn't be, for whatever reason, brought to the governor's desk. But we are fighting. Our Senate Democrats are fighting. I mean, they have sued the Speaker and the House, and that is, I don't think that has ever happened in the past. So we are really in times that are, we've never seen anything like this, like the number of things that they are doing to hurt families, to defund our schools, but also to withhold bills like this that would make a huge difference in those premiums that many of our teachers have seen starting this summer. I know that lawsuit is in the Court of Appeals, and they will be setting up oral arguments either at the end of this month or in August. So we'll be hearing a decision. I think that what happens after that, depending on what they say, or regardless, that it will probably be heard by the state Supreme Court. But we're confident that we know what the Constitution says. So this bill is going to get to the governor's desk, whether it is this term or next term. Like, these bills can't be brought back to the chamber. They simply just can't. They've passed both chambers already. So the next step is really getting the clerk to process the bills and get it to the governor's desk. There is precedence in the past. There have been bills that the chambers have passed, and then there was a change in leadership in the governor's office, and the next governor signed those bills. So that's been the case in the past, and so we know that next year, when a new governor will be elected, these bills will, they will eventually get to the governor's desk, whether it's this term or next term. I mean, we will continue to fight for it. I know there are a lot of organizations, a lot of stakeholders, a lot of teachers who rely on this bill. It is not going to fix all of the rising costs. I think the way that the 80-20 law is set up is it does help those that are like not single, but I think like couples, for example. So I heard from some of our local schools that, hey, they don't actually want to change PA 152 because they like it. Some teachers would rather take the salary than have that increase go towards the health insurance. So we know that schools need more funding, and that's what we're fighting for, because not only do they need funding to increase teacher's salary, but they need the funding so that they can pay for that 80% once this bill goes into effect. So we're looking at all of those. There's no one solution, but I'm confident that as House Democrats, we will be in a better position to advocate for schools than what we currently have right now in leadership. So I'm confident about that. If we continue to allow them to call the shots, things will just get a lot worse.
Thank you. Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, Rep. Xiong, I can't have a conversation on the House floor without hearing about 6058 from her. So, this is top of mind. She's fighting every day for that. But that bill's not going to fix everything, to your point. The other reality is a lot of people don't know kind of the interconnection between the federal budget and the state budget. And so, like I said, in Michigan, we have a very robust, sizable state budget, about roughly $85 billion, up in give or take $1 billion, depending on the year. A lot of that comes from the economic activity of the sales tax. We pay 6% sales tax. That sales tax magically makes its way to the state budget. But the federal budget sends, so of that $86 billion, though, 42% of that comes from the federal budget. And so this god awful bill, this big, ugly bill that was passed in DC is going to have very deep ramifications to our state funding. We're still analyzing the bill, and the fiscal agencies are combing through it to understand exactly what that's going to mean. But it's going to be billions of dollars of cuts to our state budget. And so, our private insurers in the state have already announced that they foresee double-digit premium increases next year in Michigan. You're going to see hospitals close. It's going to be bad. There's no reason to sugarcoat things. And so what we want to be doing right now, to your point, is figuring out ways to backfill some of those cuts. It's impossible. I can't come in here and with a straight face and tell you all that the state has the money to backfill all of those cuts from the federal government. We can't do it. The money's not there. But if there are ways to backfill smaller holes to preserve access to healthcare, to lower costs, those are the things that we want to be doing. But again, those aren't the conversations we're having in Lansing. It's all kind of just the politics and the political theater that's happening. That's what we're kind of started. That's why we're having these conversations, to also equally draw attention to all of you of just the need to advocate for real change and for real legislation to make its way out of the Michigan House. Thank you.
Any other questions from over here? We have some topics here. Would love to know what you wish elected officials would do to help support quality public education in your community. And I think you alluded to that a little bit, Reyes. Yes.
My name is Carol. I am a teacher in Lansing Public Schools, and I'm the secretary of our union, and been following what is going on.
You're a little soft-spoken here.
With education. I'm very concerned about the free breakfast and lunch. I teach first grade, and I think having officials coming to schools to see how important that is to young kids, especially. A lot of these kids don't advertise that they don't have food or they don't have a dinner that they had the night before. But teachers know they can't be their best when they take assessments, take testing. They can't build relationships with their peers. Having food, breakfast, whether it's a Pop-Tart or chocolate milk, benefits the whole day. So does lunch. So when the governor said, we're going to implement free, breakfast for everyone, it was like, wow, we don't have to charge these students for food, that they can come in and know that they're getting food. So it is very important, especially at the elementary level, that remains the same. It affects the education, it affects the kids' learning, it affects everything, especially when they have no food at home. And with budgets at the federal level, these kids are on Medicaid. These kids are receiving food stamps. These kids are our future. And so I really hope that providing these and keeping the breakfast and lunch continues. Public officials really need to come into the classroom and in our schools to see what is going on. If they do not have a experience to see what is happening on the front line, they do not know what is going on. Keeping speech teachers, keeping social workers is very important to these young kids. They do not have access to that private. And teachers can only do what we can do so much. So thank you very much for supporting us.
Thank you. Really appreciate your testimony about, the free breakfast and lunch and being in a first grade teacher. These children are still growing and they need the nutrition. They, you can't learn on an empty stomach. We know that the Universal Free Breakfast Lunch Program saves families $150, per child per year. So that is additional money that could go towards, groceries, because we know that, the inflation is still very high, and taking away that program would mean that families would have to find additional money in their own budgets to pack that breakfast and the lunch. And there's also the stigma that you mentioned that is involved too. And I'm going to ask Rep. Price to talk about this because she serves on the Appropriations Committee and was there when the hearing happened about the school budget. And let me just pass it over to you.
Thanks, Rep. Song. So as Rep. Song said, I serve on that budget committee in the House. When the Republican chair of the School Aid Committee presented his budget to our committee, I had the opportunity to ask him the question, with the rising cost of groceries, why would you propose a school aid budget that cuts breakfast and lunches for our kids? And his response was to demand that I prove that there's a relationship between feeding children and them doing well in school. And for those educators, parents, people with common sense in this room, you can relate to how absurd that is. I did struggle to respond for a minute. I was so shocked. Come on, guy. Like, feeding the kids, meeting their most basic needs is our absolute minimum responsibility. And let's just call on each other to do the right thing, provide food, and then we can talk about increasing their test scores, which will not happen if we're not meeting them where they're at in basic needs.
You never learned about Maslow's hierarchy.
I know.
And I just want to obviously I think there's a number of educators in this room. I think, one thing that makes our caucus really special is we realize that we're able to admit when we know we don't know something, we're not good at something. And we don't have the lived experience of being educators and being in the classroom every day. I'm a parent. I have a third grader, a kindergartner, and a toddler, and so I still don't know how these elementary educators can do it. I go in once a year for March is reading month, and I'm exhausted until the next year. So just thank you all for doing that, because talking about the profession of education is a whole other topic. But you shouldn't have to be a parent or an educator to understand the value of keeping a kid's belly full. I think all of us were in the legislature last term when we passed really meaningful legislation, common sense gun reform, clean energy reforms, bargaining rights, just a number, reproductive access, a number of things. But I think the one that made my heart full was when we passed a budget that allowed for this universal free school meals, because that is something that's going to impact and change the lives and trajectory of students in districts all across the state. And we deal with a lot of things and a lot of political items, but I think I truly lost faith in my colleagues across the aisle when I realized that this is not something that is just common sense to them, where they want to politicize the ability to have a kid go hungry, because it doesn't matter who you are or why you found yourself in the situation of not being able to get a school lunch. It's not the kid's fault, right? At the end of the day, and we're really creating a situation of haves and have-nots, and it's unfair. And I think we all get that in this room, but just know that we are deeply committed to that being a non-negotiable budget item for us. And so as the budget process kind of unfolds here, we will exert points of leverage, and that is something that is absolutely non-negotiable for us.
Thank you. I would like to build on that. Okay, I'm going to stand up because I can't see. So I have 2 children who are just about to go into 6th grade. We've had free lunches, but in kindergarten, we didn't have free lunches, and honestly, $150 a year, it sounds more like $150. For us, it was about $150 per month per child to feed them with either food from our house or school lunches, putting money into their accounts. And that was just for lunches. That was, not a lot with breakfast. I will say that having my kids have free foods at school, in addition to being a parent, I am also a PTC mom. I've been involved in the parent-teacher group in my kids' school for as long as we've been back from COVID. And just seeing our lunch ladies, they have it all down to a science, but they go and make sure that every child has a breakfast and a lunch. There's no stigma. There's no, what's your name? Let me check you off a list.
That's right.
It's how many have I given out today? And honestly, that usually matches up with the count of the school for the day. And honestly, that has saved us a lot of hassle and headache and a ton of money. Just taking one more thing off of our plate. While also putting something on the kids' plate. Anyway, but just having that as an option for them. But then something that I hadn't considered previously is my kids are in SAC for the summer, and they get a snack at SAC as well. So yes, we have lunches, but they also get a free snack. So even if my kid just doesn't, all of a sudden doesn't want what is in their lunchbox at lunch at SAC, I know that they have an option to grab a snack. And sure, it may not be like fresh fruit or something like that, but they'll have something in their tummies. But I would also like to encourage anybody who thinks that lunch has nothing to do with learning and performance to go a day without eating and tell me how you do your job.
Yep.
Because I get cranky right before lunch.
Right, angry.
I know that, so our lunches are at 12:30, and then we leave at 5. At 11:30, 12 o'clock, I am starting to get cranky and I cannot focus. At 4 o'clock, I am ready to go because I can't focus on anything. And I am a grown adult. Okay, I don't have to ask for restroom breaks. I don't have, a set of things I need to learn every day. I am on my own schedule. And still, I cannot focus without eating. So I can't imagine asking children, kindergartners, 5-year-old children, to go the whole day without eating for something that's not their fault. That just blows my mind. My kids were in kindergarten when COVID hit, and we did school at home remotely for first grade. Yeah, I have the most respect for that teacher.
That's right.
And every other teacher that had to deal with that shift. But those kids were on my time. We had breaks every few hours. I will tell you, those kids were in the kitchen every 2 hours. Mom, I'm hungry. They don't have the opportunity to tell the teacher I'm hungry or take snack breaks. They have to go to a longer period. But they can work on that if they have something nutritious in their tummy to start the day. So I just wanted to share that, give you. Okay, my time is up.
Oh my God.
That was my reminder to turn off my air conditioner.
Sorry, it's 7 o'clock.
It is 7 o'clock.
I'm on that too.
So I just,
Thank you.
but to your point as it relates to this conversation, so one of the things, I'm like thinking out the box, because most of us had an opportunity to have breakfast. Most of us had an opportunity to have lunch if we so chose to. I don't know, leader. What about we have this thing where there's this bipartisan, a baseball game is supposed to be friendly and all this kind of stuff, and it pretty much is, but we're talking about serious stuff. So I'm thinking, how about we challenged our colleagues to not having breakfast and not having lunch for 30 days. And let's see how productive they are. Let's see how they feel after not being able to eat for about 30 days, no breakfast, no lunch. So then they will have an opportunity to see what our babies will potentially experience because of their decisions, their bad decisions. So sometimes just the simplest of things to get people to understand what other people go through. Just because it's not your story doesn't mean the story isn't important. It's just not the truth. And so finding a way, it's just a simple little thing. Just a simple little thing. I dare you. I dare you to go 30 days without breakfast and lunch.
One
I'm
day
gonna do-
only. Just
Right,
one
right. I
day.
dare them do one day.
One day.
Y'all will
Yes.
see all the legislators on the news going crazy. It's like, what's wrong with them? They didn't eat breakfast and lunch for 2 days. Like, what the heck? So yeah. We got to find a way to get through to them. That's our biggest challenge, because you would think humanity would kick in, but when you're talking about cutting Medicaid, when you're talking about if we're going to eliminate universal meals, then a lot of our families depend on food banks and our food pantries, where they're being cut. I just visited one where the shelves were bare. They're like, what are we going to do? And there are more cuts. And this is where the families would come during the summer and they would say, well, at least our kids eat during the school year. And now we're going to take the food out of their mouths. We can't. You fund what's a priority to you. Mm-hmm. And so we've got to make certain that our colleagues on the other side of the aisle understand that all of our children, not just their children, all of our children are priorities. And the thing that's so fascinating to me is I know for a fact y'all got people in y'all community that need these services.
Yeah.
They have got to start speaking up themselves. When you tell us, you preach to the choir, y'all know what that means. We got to get the folks who don't get it to understand. So I just had to add that a little, because I think they would be furious if they couldn't.
Thank you as well. And I
Right.
I wanted to backtrack because I think you heard 150. It actually saves family $850 per child per year. So I just did some quick math, Leader Puri. You're going to have to save $1,750 for your 3 kids
You have to
per
pay
year.
per year.
If this does get cut. I want to tell you a quick story, go back, and then I want to go back to that hearing with Rep. Price, and I know we have a question here. So my kids have to pack their snack. Well, we have to pack snacks for them, 2 snacks, one in the morning, one in the late afternoon. And so my son, my 3rd-year-old, bless his heart, he would come home every day telling me how hungry he was. And I was like, what do you mean? I packed you, all these snacks and lunch. And he said, well, Mom, my classmate doesn't have a snack because his parents didn't, don't pack him one. So I've been giving my snacks away. And so I've been packing him extra snacks because I know that he, has such a good heart that this is a 3rd grader. Okay, he's 8 years old, and even he can understand that his classmates are hungry during snack time. So he's been giving away his snacks. So now I pack extra snacks so that his classmates can have snacks. No questions asked whatsoever. And that really broke my heart, just knowing that there are other kids in my own community that are starving because their parents simply cannot afford to even provide them, those 2 snacks. So one other thing that in that hearing with Rep. Price, that this particular rep who was the sponsor of this bill said that, well, we have given the schools the money and they can decide if they want to provide free breakfast or lunch. So their thought is, well, let the districts decide if they want to provide it. And I thought your response was just really important, that people need to hear it.
Yeah. Here's kind of a trick that our Republican colleagues are trying to do with our budget. They're saying they're giving more per pupil funding. And those of you in education know that's important. We've been underfunding education for a long time. The more per pupil funding we can give, the better, for sure. But they're pairing increasing per pupil funding with cutting those categoricals, cutting at-risk funding, cutting transportation funding, cutting the breakfasts and lunches. So when he says, oh, well, we're giving them more per pupil, then they can decide how to spend it. Well, you're cutting so many of the other essential services that the overall school aid budget is significantly lower.
That's right.
The teachers see through that. The educators see through it. We're grateful for the support of the MEAs and the AFT recognizing this is a bad deal and encouraging us as Dems to stay strong, don't accept a bad deal. I don't know if I covered what I wanted you to.
But you also, and one thing you also said that was important was, well, you're allowing the school districts, these adults, to decide if the free breakfast and lunch is something they want to provide for each district. So if the adults decide that we're not going to provide it, it's the children that are really suffering. So making sure that we have a statewide universal free breakfast and lunch ensures that no child goes hungry, even if the school district, decides that they want or don't want to. So I thought that was really important. And then I will go.
I just have kind of an off-the-side question. As I've heard people talk about their supportive services in their schools, I'm a nurse. I want to know, do you still have school nurses?
Depends.
Depends.
It depends.
I think we've got some.
My school, my kids go to Warren Woods schools. We have a school nurse who is on site 1 to 2 half days a week, most weeks. There are times that she is there even less.
You have one for your entire district. What you
Yes,
say?
we have a small district, but
You're
we
right.
have one.
Yeah, we have one for our whole
See,
district.
and when you list on one of those slides medication, there's a
Right.
trickle down to nurses and medications too, because we know we have children, more and more children with diabetes who apparently could be on insulin, who need
That's
to
right.
have those snacks and things. So that whole thing feeds into that role of the nurse in that system too.
Yes, thank you. All right, so we're going to, this is a great, yes, Liz, you had a question?
Can I
Sure,
ask a question?
absolutely.
Okay, and I just wanted to kind of, what I keep hearing is, concerns about the cuts that, are gonna be going on with this new ugly bill. And one of the things that really has impacted Lisa and I, we're 4th grade teachers in Romeo, is the mental health of our students. And we are seeing more and more students who need the help of our school social worker, need to go to counseling while they're in school because their parents aren't able to, take them for a variety of reasons, out of school. And it's translating into so many things that impact our teaching. And when you think about things that are crucial to being able to have a child be able to learn, besides having food in their belly, in my opinion, the next really important thing is
Yes.
the mental health.
That's right.
And if they're, really struggling and being anxious, or, we have children that are acting out and they're becoming violent, and then, other children see the violence and then they think it's okay, or they're scared from it. And, if you have a child who's scared of another child in their classroom, that there is going to be no learning going on there either. So in my opinion, I think that one of the really important pieces is to make sure that we still have those school psychologists, the school social workers, make sure that we have the support for the regular classroom teacher, because otherwise that just gets, if it's not there, and what we have now is not even enough, right? We need more.
We do have a social worker.
We do have a social worker in each of our buildings in our district, but it's not even enough. We really need some behavior interventionists. We need some PD for our teachers so that they can get the de-escalation strategies to deal with these students that have violent tendencies, and of no fault of their own. Usually they act out because
Just what they say.
their needs aren't being met somewhere in their little lives, right?
Yeah.
So that is a really important piece, because these kids are our future, right? And we want to see them learn and thrive, and their mental health is just as important as their physical health too.
Yeah. It's
So-
the whole person, the whole little person, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. And what's really scary about what you're saying is when we do things like cut that mental health, those interventions, not just acting out, but taking their lives. Our young people, so I'm still at a loss for how somebody 6 years old can feel like life isn't worth living anymore. And so this is what I mean when I say we fund what's a priority to us, and funding mental health for our children should be a priority, understanding the impact that it has on them. So I'm with you 100%. We've all been, that is something that continues to be top of mind for us.
Yes.
I work closely with the National Alliance of Mental Illness, and they've been back and forth to DC, like, do you all not understand what cuts the Medicaid is gonna do to people who are suffering from mental illness? It's like, you gotta look at it like diabetes. Like, nobody looks at you side-eye when you say, I'm diabetic and I need to take insulin. They're like, oh, okay, well, good for you, right? And you say, well, I have this mental health condition and I need to take Zoloft, whatever. Oh, well, that's taboo. And we've got to take that stigma out so that people are free to talk about their needs so they can get the help that they need, the medication, the counseling, all of those things. And it's getting younger and younger. Our babies are starting to need this. And when you think about it, the truth is they might have needed it before, but we didn't talk about it. We didn't know that children needed mental health support 40 years ago because they were just told, be good, be quiet, sit down. That was me. I grew up in an alcoholic household. I've given that testimony on the floor where any given day, we'll come home, my mother say, pack your bags, he's on a bender, and then we'd leave. I probably could have used a therapist at 8. Seriously. And we have kids that are dealing with things right now that fortunately we found that out and now we're providing these services and now we're going to take them away.
Yes. Thank
So
you.
sad.
So correct me if I'm wrong, my colleagues. I believe that there's in the budget what's known as boilerplate language. So the Republicans insert language in there that's not really related to the budget. And I believe there's something in there about every school having a mental support staff person, but they can't be. There's a shortage. There's a shortage of counselors, mental health support staff. But in their language, it does say they have to have one and it can't be shared. So every school has to have one. So it's sort of contradictory. Otherwise, you won't get that funding. And so there's just stuff in the budget that it would actually prevent that funding reaching schools if they don't have their own mental health support staff. And then I think for private schools or charter schools, they can actually have a shared support staff. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I kind of remember that being in the language. There's other stuff in their suggested budget proposal about not providing services to illegal, undocumented children and just ridiculous stuff that we are still trying to go through. All right, so this is a good segue to the next topic that I want to pose is what impact do all of you have or have heard about this big ugly bill, the cuts to Medicaid, the food assistance program, SNAP. These we know that are going to affect students and families, and if we're not if we lose the universal free breakfast and lunch, I think some of our colleagues are on the other side say, well, there will still be other services, like SNAP and we know that with this federal bill that has been signed into law, it would actually kick families, millions of families off of SNAP benefits. So it's almost kind of like a catch-22. So love to hear what you guys have to share. Yes, Bob.
Well, I just spoke to this recently. I think it's about $160 million for the state in Medicaid funding that we would potentially lose. In thinking about Medicaid, I think about all the programs that Medicaid funds directly within our schools, right? That's the $160 million. But then, like you were saying, Rep. Xiong, there's so much more with all of just the medical aspects of Medicaid, right? There's getting the extra speech support and the extra, psychologists and social worker support, and all those types of things that we fund in our schools through Medicaid. But then, obviously, coming to school hungry because they didn't have dinner the night before because they're not getting their food assistance in the evening. And then if we're not able to provide the breakfast and the lunch, I know, like myself, probably all the educators in the room probably had their little snack closets back in the day before we were offering food so that we could make sure that kids weren't passing out in the back of the classroom because they hadn't eaten breakfast and lunch was still another hour away at fourth hour, right? And that's a high school where we had students like that. So, I definitely see the impact that Medicaid cuts would have. I just wanted to segue for a minute, just so that these are in the room. Teachers often sound like they're in the military, right? We've got our ASD, our EI, our LD, our MOSI, our MISI, our ECSE, our resource room, our SOP, our psychologists. The number of acronyms used in education, almost all of those fall under Medicaid. Almost all of those fall under having an IEP.
Right.
Right? There's another acronym
That's
for it,
right.
right? So the educators in the room know the lingo I just shared, but all of that will be impacted, and those are our most at-risk students.
That's right. That's right.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I share something related to that? I was just on legislative doors in my district last week, and I met a constituent who is Royal Oak, has a fourth grader in Royal Oak schools who's been on an IEP since he was in kindergarten. And they just got a call trying to pressure them to move from an IEP to a 504 because the school is already anticipating on not having the supports and worried about the pending litigation that will happen when the school does not provide the supports that that kid is entitled to and desperately needs to succeed. So I'm hearing those stories already, and I'm worried.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was my understanding, I read something today online about how part of the new ugly bill will give states the choice on vouchers for schools, and how, that is so significant as well for the money that might be taken away from our public schools if it does go through and Michigan decides to all of a sudden allow vouchers, because then that's just going to be a trickle down effect where our districts will have to choose what they can provide and support still and what they can't. So I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
That could quite very well be a possibility. There's just so much in that bill that will hurt our state that we are still trying to figure out what those exact numbers are. And I know that we are having internal discussions about the fiscal impact. We really don't have the final figures yet. We're hearing all different types of things, but we know that it's going to do more damage to our state than it is going to help. As Leader Puri said, 40% of our state's budget is federal dollars, and then our education budget about 10%, so $500 million, $550 million is from federal dollars, and we could very well lose a lot more than that. As far as our Medicaid budget, in the MDHHS budget, 70% of our DHS budget is Medicaid. Period. So over $60 billion, 70% of that is just Medicaid. And I've seen, I think you said a lot smaller number. I heard $6 billion. Just for schools.
Yeah.
For overall the state, $6 billion of Medicaid funding would be gone. And I'm concerned because of not just the work requirement, but also the having to every 6 months to confirm eligibility.
Yeah.
When we know that, and you all know, if you've ever had to deal with the DHS, the process of getting approval, you're waiting 6 months for a letter. So by the time you get your letter in the mail, 6 months has already passed, and then you have to, reapply again. So that's my biggest concern, really, is that there's a lot of, catch-22s that are a part of this bill. All right, we're going to move on. I think we have about 10 minutes left. I do want to get to the next topic. The next question is, let's talk about higher education. What support do you wish was available for higher education and skills training? We know that four-year university is not right for everyone. We have worked to expand post-secondary training. We, in the current fiscal year 25 budget, we had implemented and appropriated funding for the Michigan Guarantee, which would ensure that every high school student that graduated here in Michigan would be able to go to community college for free, or a 2-year program. And we haven't talked about that, but that program is also at risk of being discontinued under the House Republicans' proposed plan. So that is really concerning, but if anybody has any questions or,
I
yes.
come from a family of 5 generations in the building trades.
Mm.
Not everybody needs to go to college. I really think we need more funding for the skilled trades and encouraging people and introducing them to those as a possibility. And I'm here to tell you that I have a son who's almost 60. Through the years, has made more money per hour than I did as a nurse in the skilled trades.
Right, thank you.
No, yeah, that's absolutely spot on. We've been sharing that too. We in Detroit, we have the Carpenters and Millwright. They just built that phenomenal facility where young people are going. But I'm going to tell you, folks know I always keep it real, right? One of our biggest challenges, these opportunities exist for our young people. They test for marijuana. And our young people feel like because it's legal, then why am I being penalized by using something that's legal when it comes to trade schools? Because I'm like, well, because you're operating heavy equipment, you could lose a finger. There are a bunch of different reasons why it's important to be clearly thinking, but that has really been a challenge. I've been meeting with some of our folks, and they're like, if we can get our young people to understand that we're not interested in what you do on your private time, but we need you to be able to test clean when you come to work, so that we can help you get a $50 an hour job. We don't make $50 an hour in the legislature, I tell you that. So that's one of the challenges, though. But you're spot on. Not everybody.
Because my son just told me recently that it was his day, because once a year he apparently has to be tested, and he does smoke pot once in a while, so he knows.
That's right. We're just keeping it real here.
No judgment zone.
That's right. No, right.
You got one more back there?
Just real quick, I just wanted to thank everybody who was part of the Michigan Reconnect Scholarship for older students who are not fresh out of high school. I am a Reconnect Scholarship recipient. I just graduated in May.
Oh, congratulations.
So thank you. I am a Macomb Community College alumni now. Nice. So, but without that, I couldn't have done it. So just keep in mind that it's not just fresh high school students who are looking for further education. Just keep us older students in mind too when you're looking at things.
Thank you. And I believe we did expand that age too. All right, Rep. Young has a question.
Yes. So
Can we pass her the mic?
Yeah. Nancy states, look, I've got too many questions. However, this is my main concern right now, and it has to do with funds for after-school programs and volunteer programs for student staff in the Warren District, Fitzgerald schools. My nieces and nephews, including teacher staff, reached out to me. I am worried. Please let me know what I can do within the community. And yes, it concerns WIA, WIAO, there you go with all those acronyms again, Michigan Work Programs for everyone to use. Thank you all so much. So yeah, after school program, that's huge. Did you want to speak to it really quick?
I do. I'm going to use this as a quick opportunity to let you know. We've got a few, we talked today about our concerns with the Republicans in the House and how they're trying to hold up and cause barriers to our state navigated budget. We also alluded to that big, horrible bill, which did pass through Congress in legal congressional ways that we're going to have to deal with. And we have an executive administration in DC who is doing overreach and withholding dollars right now for after school programs and summer programs and education that have already been appropriated by Congress, doing something similar to what we talked about Matt Hall doing, overreach, trying to take a power of the purse that he should not have. And leadership knows, although I haven't had a chance to share this with the whole caucus, but I will be introducing a bill that will put the state in a position, enable the state to respond when federal courts rule that those actions, it's called impounding, when the executive hold back funds illegally that he doesn't have permission from Congress to withhold that have already been funded. So we have a response that the state of Michigan can do. We can put liens on federal property. We can withhold our federal payments in the amount that are being withheld illegally by the Trump administration. So I have been out talking in the media about that. I think it's important. I know our constituents want to know that we are doing everything that we possibly can in our power to protect our residents and make sure that our state money, our state taxes are being used for essential resources in this state.
Thank you. I think we had someone in the back that wanted to, Nancy, that was your question.
Yeah, that
yeah.
was me.
Yeah. Well, press the button, bottom. Press the bottom of
I was
the
interviewed on
microphone.
MERS about that today, so we'll see how that goes.
Good for you. I look forward to reading that. It's a good.
MERS Monday.
Yeah.
Podcast.
All right, there's Nancy.
You actually answered my question. It's just that it was a concern that came recently. Like my nephew came, the bilingual teacher that came to me as well. There was the same. I've been in that district for over 20 years, and I thought to myself, I went to my high school reunion. These people had reached out to me, and it's like I'm out of the 1,000 students, I'm out of the maybe 100 teachers, and I'm just that one person that came in. So if you're able to help this year for my nieces and nephews to graduate this year, and also next year, and the next few years, maybe it can help whatever is happening to this administration. I just wonder if there's a solution. Please let me know as soon as possible, because they came to me in person, personally wise, and I graduated from Fitzgerald 20 years ago, and I thought to myself, like, I'm gonna meet up these people again, and I'm just gonna go back to my parents' house, like, what can I tell to my nephews, what can I tell my nieces? So it's something that I'm not only saying for the Fitzgerald communities, also the clubs and after schools, Michigan Works. I have helped with a lot of students. I have a lot of teachers that still remember me. So if you guys can help me, then thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to wrap it up. I'm going to hand it over to Leader Puri. I want to thank all of you guys for being here, for staying engaged, and for all the input that you guys have provided for us. It's truly appreciated.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And again, just thank you. Thank you to all of you for coming out and sharing your thoughts and being our guinea pigs of kind of embarking on this Visions project. For us, it was really important to hear from you. Hopefully we did a good job listening and not controlling the mics, because, as elected officials, we're kind of attached to these things. And so, but with that, I do want to thank Rep. Xiong for having us in your district and organize this, and Rep. Price and Rep. Young both for your personal testimonies here of just and perspectives, everything that you bring. As we close tonight, we've talked about a number of key topics: the school meals, the Medicaid cuts, education funding as a whole. These are really, really important things to myself, everyone on this panel, and our entire caucus. And so the only way this works well is to making sure that everyone's feedback is included. So continue to please give the feedback. Again, I think there's, is it the QR code? There you go. There's a QR code. Please scan that. Or you can go to housedems.com and click on it there and fill up your feedback. But we look forward to building this all out and continuing to hear from everyone. Just know that the values we talked about today are the values that we bring to our work every single day. So again, thank you all for sharing a beautiful Friday evening with us, and we look forward to continuing this conversation. Thank you.
Can I clarify something real quick? And again, this is our first time, but this is the Vision Project survey. This is not a survey about how things went tonight, although we'd love to hear feedback on that too. This is that call to action. You are asking for what can I do? We need your stories. We need the details that you shared tonight about how you and your communities are impacted, and this is a great way to get it to us. You can also share the survey with your neighbors, your family, your friends, anyone who is a resident in the state of Michigan, whether they have a Democratic representative or not. We need to hear from them. So please, that's our call to action tonight, is to fill this out and share it with the people that you are close with, and ask them to share their stories so we know how they're impacted, so we can be better advocates on behalf of you and your communities.
Awesome.
Okay.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.